The morning started like any other day on Colony 7. The massive biodomes gleamed under the twin suns, and workers moved between buildings in their environment suits. No one expected the peace to shatter. At exactly 900 Earth Standard Time, the first plasma bolts struck the main communications array. The gray ships appeared from behind the planet's largest moon, their silver hulls reflecting starlight as they descended through the atmosphere. Colony 7's defense systems remained silent. They had been sabotaged from within. Commander Peter stood at the command center's main window, his face pale with shock. The Greys had been their allies for 15 years. They had helped build these very colonies, shared technology, and participated in joint scientific missions. Now, those same allies were turning their weapons on defenseless human settlements. "Sir, we're getting reports of simultaneous attacks on colonies 3 and 5. Lieutenant Mark's voice cracked as he read the incoming data. The Greys, they're bombing civilian sectors. Peter slammed his fist on the console. "Get me Earth Command. We need reinforcements." But the communications remained dead. The Greys had planned this well, cutting off all faster-than-light communications before the attack began. Colony 7 was alone, just like all the other human settlements under attack. Through the chaos, Dr. Robert attempted to save as much research data as possible. The Greys had always shown particular interest in human biology and psychology. Now he understood why. They had been studying human weaknesses all along. "Download everything to the secure servers," he shouted to his team. "They can't get their hands on our defense research." Outside, the colony's emergency sirens wailed. Civilians rushed to the underground bunkers, parents carrying children, elderly being helped by neighbors. The human spirit of cooperation emerged strongest in crisis. The Grey ships landed outside the main dome, and their troops marched out in perfect formation. Their tall, thin bodies moved with mechanical precision, and their large black eyes showed no emotion. They had always looked mysterious to humans, but now they appeared menacing. "They're broadcasting something," Lieutenant Mark announced, his hands flying over the controls. "Putting it on speakers." A cold, emotionless voice filled the command center. "Humans of Colony 7. Your species has been deemed too unpredictable and dangerous for continued galactic cooperation. Your tendency toward violence, your rapid technological advancement, and your emotional instability make you a threat to cosmic peace. Surrender now, and we will ensure your species' survival under proper control." Peter looked at the faces around him. Fear, anger, determination. Human emotions the Greys could never understand. He grabbed the comm system's microphone. "This is Commander Peter to all colony residents. We will not surrender. Initiate Protocol Dark Shield." Protocol Dark Shield was a last resort defense measure. The colony's power core would overload, creating an electromagnetic pulse that would cripple any technology within range. It would destroy much of the colony's systems, but it would also stop the Grey advance. "Sir," Mark looked up from his station, "we're getting messages from other colonies. They're fighting back. Humans everywhere are refusing to surrender." As the Grey forces breached the outer doors, Peter smiled grimly. The aliens had studied humans for years, but had missed something fundamental. Humans fought hardest when cornered. The power core's whine grew louder. Emergency lights flashed as systems prepared for shutdown. The Grey troops advanced through the corridors, their weapons ready, expecting to find cowering humans. Instead, they found emptiness. The colonists had vanished into the underground tunnels that the Greys didn't know existed. Humans had always prepared for betrayal, even from their allies. The explosion came minutes later. The electromagnetic pulse swept through the colony, destroying Grey weapons and communications. In the darkness that followed, humans emerged from hiding, armed with simple weapons that didn't need electronics. As the first day of war ended, millions were dead across 3 star systems. But humanity had survived the initial attack, and that was more than the Greys had planned for. In their perfect calculations, they had forgotten that humans excelled at surviving the impossible. In orbit, the gray ships received new orders: find and eliminate all human resistance. They didn't realize they had just started a war they couldn't win. 3 months after the initial attack, Earth's last standing research facility on Mars buzzed with activity. Hidden beneath the red planet's surface, thousands of survivors worked tirelessly to find a way to fight back against the Greys. Dr. Ann bent over her microscope, studying tissue samples taken from a dead Grey soldier. After weeks of non-stop work, she had noticed something extraordinary. The Grey's cellular structure changed when exposed to strong human emotional patterns. "Look at this," she called to her colleague Dr. Mike. "When we expose the tissue to recordings of human laughter, the cells begin to deteriorate." Mike adjusted his glasses and peered into the microscope. "It's like their biology is allergic to human emotions. No wonder they always kept their distance during diplomatic meetings." In another section of the underground base, Captain Tom reviewed footage from successful resistance attacks. His team had discovered that the Greys couldn't handle unpredictability. Their tactical computers failed when humans acted randomly, outside of logical patterns. "Play that section again," Tom ordered, watching as a small human ship performed impossible maneuvers that confused Grey targeting systems. "They rely too much on their technology. They expect everything to follow rules." The base's main command center received reports from surviving colonies across the solar system. Humans had scattered like seeds in the wind, hiding in asteroid belts, on moons, and in deep space stations. The Greys couldn't find them all. "Sir, we've decoded another Grey transmission," a young operator named Jack announced. "They're frustrated. Their search patterns aren't working because our people keep moving randomly." The base commander, William, nodded with satisfaction. "They thought they knew us from their studies, but they never understood that chaos is our natural state." Deep in the engineering section, survivors worked to modify human technology. They had learned that Grey sensors couldn't detect systems that used old, primitive electronics. A team led by engineer Susan was retrofitting spacecraft with deliberately simple controls. "Strip out all the AI assists," she ordered. "Pure manual control only. The Greys won't expect anyone to fly without computers." The base's hospital wing treated survivors who managed to escape Grey-controlled territories. Their stories provided valuable intelligence about Grey operations. Dr. Lisa listened to each tale, looking for patterns and weaknesses. "They can't stand loud music," one escaped prisoner reported. "When we sang to keep our spirits up, they would leave the prison block entirely." In the training areas, soldiers learned new ways to fight. Traditional military discipline was abandoned in favor of guerrilla tactics. The survivors learned to act unpredictably, to think like individuals rather than units. "Don't move in formation," Sergeant Paul taught his squad. "Move like a crowd at a concert." The Greys can't predict a mosh pit. The hydroponics gardens flourished under artificial light, feeding the base's population. The gardeners had discovered that Grey scanning technology couldn't penetrate certain types of mineral-rich soil. They were already planning how to use this knowledge to hide larger settlements. "The plants grow better when we talk to them," reported Gardener Mary. "The Greys would never understand that. They think it's illogical." As night fell on the Martian surface, the base's lights dimmed to conserve power. In her lab, Dr. Ann made a breakthrough. She had isolated the component in Grey biology that reacted to human emotional energy. "Get me the commander," she called excitedly into her comm unit. "I know how we can hurt them." The base's mess hall was filled with quiet conversation as survivors shared their daily meals. Despite everything they had lost, hope grew stronger each day. Humans were adapting, learning, and preparing to fight back. "They thought they could break us," Tom said to his team over dinner. "Instead, they forced us to become stronger." In orbit around Mars, automated decoy beacons fooled Grey patrol ships into chasing false signals. The resistance grew beneath their feet while they searched the stars. The survivors had learned the most important lesson of all. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or weapons, but in its infinite capacity to adapt and overcome. The Greys had started this war expecting to face an inferior species. They would soon learn just how wrong they were. In the depths of the Mars base laboratory, Dr. Ann stared at her computer screen, her eyes red from lack of sleep. The code on her screen wasn't just any program. It was a virus designed to target Grey technology, but with a twist. This virus carried the encoded patterns of human emotional energy. The test results are ready, Mike called from across the lab, his voice trembling with excitement. The virus doesn't just shut down their systems, it makes their technology respond to human emotional patterns. It's like giving their machines feelings. The lab's test chamber held a captured Grey computer system. When they introduced the virus, the alien technology began behaving erratically, its circuits overloading from exposure to digitized human emotional patterns. Meanwhile, in the weapons development sector, engineer Susan had modified standard plasma rifles to emit bursts that matched human brainwave patterns. Initial tests showed the weapons caused Grey soldiers physical discomfort even when the shots missed. Their entire biology is built on logic and order, Susan explained to the gathered officers. Our emotions are like static in their systems. Now we can weaponize that static. The base's central planning room buzzed with activity as commanders studied the new data. Holographic displays showed Grey fleet movements, their patterns becoming more desperate as they failed to locate major human resistance groups. Look at this, Commander William pointed to a sector map. They keep searching the same areas over and over. They can't comprehend that we're not following any logical pattern of movement. Deep in the base's secure storage, technicians loaded the emotional virus into specially designed transmission pods. Each pod was built using primitive technology that Grey sensors would overlook as harmless debris. Remember, Chief Technician John instructed his team, these pods have to look like space junk. The Greys are too logical to imagine a weapon hidden in what they consider trash. The research team had discovered another crucial weakness. Grey ships used a biological electronic hybrid for their main computers. These systems were vulnerable to both the digital virus and the emotional energy weapons. Their greatest strength is their greatest weakness, Dr. Ann explained during the final briefing. They integrated their biology into their technology to make it more efficient, but now both can be affected by our weapons. In the training rooms, soldiers practiced with the new emotional energy weapons. The weapons required users to focus their feelings, anger, joy, love, fear, to achieve maximum effect. It was the most human weapon ever created. Channel your emotions into the trigger, Sergeant Paul instructed. The stronger the feeling, the more damage it does to their systems. They never imagined emotions could be used as a weapon. The base's communication center monitored Grey transmissions, noting increasing signs of confusion and frustration in their normally precise language. The aliens couldn't understand why their perfect strategies were failing. They're starting to make mistakes, Jack reported from his monitoring station. Their communications are showing signs of stress. They didn't know they could feel stress until they started fighting us. The manufacturing levels worked around the clock, producing more emotion-enhanced weapons and virus pods. Each device was deliberately simple, built with technology the Greys would consider primitive and harmless. Keep the circuits basic, Susan ordered her production teams. The more advanced they are, the easier they are for the Greys to detect. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As the final preparations were made, Dr. Ann made one last modification to the virus. She added a component that would make Grey systems experience the full range of human emotions, from joy to sorrow, love to anger. Let them feel what it means to be human, she said softly as she sealed the final code. Let them understand what they're really fighting against. The day of deployment approached. The Resistance had created a weapon that turned humanity's greatest perceived weakness, its emotions, into its strongest weapon. The Greys had dismissed human feelings as a flaw, never imagining these same emotions would become their downfall. Commander William looked at the assembled weapons and virus pods, each one ready to show the Greys the true power of humanity. They wanted to destroy what makes us human, he said, Instead, we'll use it to destroy them. Operation Thunderstorm began at midnight Earth time, when human ships launched from hidden bases across the solar system. Their flight patterns were deliberately chaotic, looping, spinning, and moving in ways that defied logical prediction. In the lead ship, Captain Tom watched his radar screen fill with confused gray signatures. The alien vessels tried to track the human ships, but failed as their targeting computers struggled to predict the unpredictable. "Launch the virus pods," Tom ordered. His fleet released thousands of seemingly harmless pieces of space debris. Each contained Dr. Ann's emotional virus, waiting to infect gray systems. The gray command ships noticed the debris but ignored it, just as planned. Their logic couldn't conceive of a threat hidden in what appeared to be random space junk. The pods drifted toward their ships, sensors dark, carrying their invisible weapon. "First pod has attached to a gray cruiser," reported Officer John through the fleet channel. "Virus deployment in 3, 2, 1. The effect was immediate and devastating. The gray cruiser's lights flickered as its hybrid biological electronic systems were flooded with human emotional patterns. The ship began to move erratically, its crew overwhelmed by the sudden onset of feelings they had never experienced. "Target their command ships," Tom ordered. "Let them feel what it's like to be human." The modified plasma rifles proved equally effective in ship-to-ship combat. Each shot carried concentrated emotional energy that disrupted gray technology on impact. Their shields, designed to block physical attacks, had no defense against weapons powered by human feelings. In the space around Mars, gray ships spun in confusion as their systems experienced joy, fear, anger, and love for the first time. Some ships shut down completely, their crew unable to handle the emotional overload. "They're breaking formation," Susan reported from her engineering station. "Their fleet coordination is falling apart. They can't maintain their rigid battle patterns." The virus spread from ship to ship through the gray fleet's connected networks. As each vessel was infected, it began broadcasting emotional energy, creating a cascade effect that amplified the virus's impact. On the ground, human strike teams attacked gray bases with their emotion-enhanced weapons. The alien soldiers, faced with weapons that made them feel human emotions, began to retreat in disorder. "They can't handle it," Sergeant Paul reported from the front lines. "Their troops are experiencing emotions for the first time in battle. They have no training for this." The gray command structure, built on perfect logic and order, crumbled as emotional chaos spread through their ranks. Ships fired on their own allies. Troops fled from battle, and commanders made irrational decisions. "Their main communication hub is offline," Jack announced from the command center. "The virus has reached their central network. Their entire command and control system is experiencing emotional overload." Dr. Ann monitored the virus's spread from her lab, watching as it infected gray system after gray system. "They integrated their biology too deeply with their technology," she observed. "They never considered that emotions could be used as a weapon against both." The battle reached its peak as human ships pressed their advantage. The gray fleet, once perfectly organized, had devolved into a chaotic mass of confused vessels. Some ships tried to flee, while others drifted aimlessly, their crews paralyzed by their first experience of human feelings. "Push forward," Commander William ordered. "Don't give them time to adapt. Keep your movements random and unpredictable." The human fleet's tactics were a deliberate mockery of military order. Ships looped and swirled in patterns that looked like dance moves. Each maneuver was guided by feeling rather than logic, making it impossible for gray tactical computers to predict. As the day ended, the gray fleet was in full retreat. Their supposedly superior forces had been defeated by the very emotions they had dismissed as weakness. Humanity had turned its greatest difference from the grays into its most powerful weapon. "Send word to all human colonies," Tom commanded. "Operation Thunderstorm was a success. The grays are running." In the debris of battle, gray ships drifted powerless, their crews experiencing the full spectrum of human emotions for the first time. They had wanted to suppress humanity's emotional nature. Instead, they had been overwhelmed by its power. The counterstrike had succeeded beyond all expectations, proving that humanity's unique traits, its emotions, its unpredictability, its chaos, were not weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be embraced. News of the Grey Fleet's defeat spread rapidly across the galaxy. In the Great Council chambers of the Stellar Alliance, representatives from a dozen alien species watched footage of the battle with growing concern. The Blue Star delegation spoke first. The Greys assured us humans were primitive and dangerous, yet they have defeated the most advanced fleet in the galaxy using technology we considered obsolete. Commander Williams stood before the Alliance Council, his presence a stark reminder of human resilience. The chamber, designed for logical and orderly discourse, felt the weight of his emotional energy. The Greys convinced you that human emotions made us unstable, William addressed the gathered aliens. Now you've seen how those same emotions defeated their perfect logic. On screens around the chamber, more reports arrived. Grey outposts were falling across multiple sectors as the emotional virus spread through their network. Their once mighty empire was crumbling from within. "We were wrong to trust the Greys," announced the Crystal Sphere representative. "They claimed to protect galactic order, but they sought to control it. My people withdraw from the anti-human alliance." The chamber erupted in a cascade of similar declarations. Species after species broke their ties with the Greys, recognizing the danger of remaining aligned with a failing power. The Greys didn't just underestimate humans, the mountain folk delegate observed. They failed to understand that diversity makes the galaxy stronger. Their quest for perfect order was doomed from the start. In orbit around distant worlds, Grey warships found themselves increasingly isolated. Former allies turned them away from ports and supply stations. The mighty Grey Fleet, once the galaxy's most feared force, became a collection of refugees. Their empire was built on the promise of perfect order, Dr. Ann explained to the Council. Our virus didn't just affect their technology. It showed their entire philosophy was flawed. The Greys made desperate attempts to maintain control. They threatened their former allies with retaliation, but their threats rang hollow. Everyone had seen how vulnerable they were to human emotional warfare. "Look at their tactical patterns," Captain Tom showed the Council. "They're still trying to fight with pure logic, even as their systems are overwhelmed with emotions. They can't adapt." Former Grey client states began reaching out to Earth, seeking new alliances. They brought stories of Grey manipulation and control, revealing how deeply the aliens had tried to reshape the galaxy in their image. "We were all deceived," the Star Wanderer representative admitted. The Greys claimed to bring unity through order. Instead, they brought uniformity through control. In their desperation, the Greys launched attacks against their former allies, trying to maintain their power through force. But their emotionally compromised ships and crews proved ineffective against prepared defenses. "Every attack makes them weaker," Susan reported. "The virus spreads to any Grey system that connects with their network. They're destroying themselves." The Alliance Council chamber transformed into a center for coordinating the response to Grey aggression. Species that had been enemies days before now worked together, sharing information and resources. "Humanity doesn't seek to control the galaxy," William assured the Council. "We want to be part of it, with all its beautiful chaos and diversity." More Grey ships appeared in human space, not to attack but to surrender. Their crews, experiencing emotions for the first time, chose feeling over logic, freedom over control. "They're changing," Dr. Ann observed as she studied the surrendered crews. "The virus didn't just defeat them, it's transforming them. They're learning to feel." The Great Grey Empire, built over centuries of careful manipulation and control, collapsed in weeks. Their former allies, freed from Grey influence, discovered they preferred the unpredictable nature of true cooperation to the rigid order of Grey control. "The alliance shatters," Jack announced, monitoring the final Grey broadcasts. "But something better is being born from its ruins." As the day ended, The council chambers were filled with the sounds of a dozen species working together, their differences no longer seen as flaws to be corrected, but strengths to be celebrated. The Greys had tried to unite the galaxy through perfect order. Instead, humanity had united it through the very chaos and emotion the Greys had feared. It was the ultimate proof that their war against human nature had been doomed from the start. The Grey homeworld hung like a perfect silver sphere in space, its surface covered in geometrically precise cities and installations. The combined fleet of humanity and its new allies emerged from faster-than-light travel, surrounding the planet in a deliberate pattern of beautiful chaos. "They're still trying to calculate our attack vectors," Captain Tom reported from the fleet's command ship. "Their defensive grid is confused by our formation. They can't understand why we're not following tactical logic." Dr. N's upgraded virus waited in countless pods, ready for deployment. This final version carried the full spectrum of human emotional experience, refined to affect both Grey biology and technology simultaneously. "Remember," her voice came through the fleet's communication system, "this isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. We're not here to annihilate them, but to wake them up." The Grey defense fleet rose to meet them, their ships still moving in perfect, predictable patterns. But now those patterns were their weakness, making them easy targets for the human-led attack. "Launch the pods," Commander William ordered. "Let's show them what they've been missing all these centuries." Thousands of virus pods scattered across space, drifting toward the Grey planet like seeds in the wind. The Grey defenses, programmed to stop logical attacks, didn't recognize the threat hidden in such apparent randomness. "First wave of pods entering the atmosphere," Susan reported from her engineering station. "Their planetary shields are calibrated for energy weapons, not emotional frequencies." The effect began slowly, then accelerated. Grey cities, built on perfect order, erupted in chaos as their systems were flooded with human emotions. Streets designed for efficient movement became venues for spontaneous gatherings. Buildings meant to process logic began processing feelings. "Their orbital defense grid is compromised," Jack announced. "The virus is spreading through their planetary network. Their entire civilization is experiencing emotions for the first time." On the surface, Grey society transformed. Individuals who had never felt joy, love, or even anger began experiencing the full range of emotional life. Some panicked, others celebrated, but none could maintain their former rigid order. "Their central command is broadcasting," reported Officer John. "But it's not military orders anymore. They're singing." The Grey leadership, hidden in their deep bunkers, found themselves overwhelmed by the emotional awakening. Their perfectly logical plans crumbled as they experienced the power of feelings they had always dismissed as primitive. "Move the fleet into position," William commanded. "Prepare for ground operations. Remember, we're here to help them through this transition, not to conquer them." Human ships landed across the Grey homeworld, carrying medical teams and emotional counselors. The Grey population, experiencing feelings for the first time in their species' history, needed guidance to understand their new reality. "Their biological reconstruction is beginning," Dr. N observed through her monitors. "Their neural pathways are adapting to process emotions. They're becoming more like us, but still uniquely themselves." The Grey military forces, their weapons and systems compromised by the virus, laid down their arms. Without their rigid logical structure, they could no longer maintain their will to fight. "The last defensive positions are surrendering," Sergeant Paul reported from the ground. "They're not just giving up. They're asking for help understanding what they're feeling." In the Grey capital, a city built like a perfect geometric crystal, chaos bloomed like flowers through cracks in concrete. The inhabitants discovered art, music, and dance for the first time, their ordered world transforming into something more vibrant and alive. "This is what they feared," Susan said, watching the transformation. "Not that we would destroy them, but that we would change them. They were right to be afraid, but wrong about whether that change would be good." The final push had succeeded, not through destruction, but through transformation. The gray civilization, built on the suppression of emotion and the pursuit of perfect order, was experiencing a revolution of feeling. "Send word to Earth," Commander William ordered. "The gray homeworld is secured. But more importantly, they're awakening. They're finally learning what it means to be truly alive." As the day ended, the sound of music, the first music ever created on the gray homeworld, echoed through streets that had known only silence. The final push had brought not victory through destruction, but triumph through transformation. 1 year after the transformation of the gray homeworld, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Great Hall of the new Galactic Council bore witness to this change, as representatives from all species, including the transformed Greys, gathered to shape the future. Commander Williams stood at the podium, addressing the assembled delegates. The room hummed with emotional energy, something that would have been unthinkable in the old Gray-dominated order. "We gather here not as conquerors or conquered," he began, "but as equals. Each species brings its own gifts to our shared future." The Greys sought uniformity. "We choose unity in diversity." In the Gray section of the hall, their representatives no longer sat in perfect formation. Some smiled, others gestured animatedly as they spoke. Their once identical appearances had given way to individual expressions and styles. "The emotional awakening changed everything," Dr. Ann reported to the council. "The Greys' biology has stabilized. They can now feel emotions naturally, though they experience them differently than humans do." The new Galactic Charter was displayed on massive screens. Its first article declared that no species would attempt to force its way of life upon another. The Gray representative, Leader Max, had helped write it, a task that would have been impossible for his emotionless predecessors. "We were wrong," Max addressed the council, his voice carrying new warmth. "We thought emotions were a weakness to be eliminated. Instead, they were the key to a richer existence than we could have imagined." Captain Tom, now Admiral Tom, reported on the state of galactic security. The new defense fleet combined ships from all species, each contributing their unique strengths. Human unpredictability worked alongside Gray precision, creating something greater than either alone. "The virus that transformed the Greys has been contained," Engineer Susan explained. "It served its purpose, but now we move forward through choice, not force. Every species decides its own path." Earth had emerged as a respected power, but not an empire. Humanity's gift to the galaxy had been showing that chaos and order, emotion and logic, could coexist and strengthen each other. "Trade routes have tripled," Jack announced from his new position as Commerce Coordinator. "When species stop trying to control each other, cooperation flourishes naturally." The Gray cities had transformed. Their perfect geometric patterns now incorporated organic elements, creating a harmony between order and nature. Their society maintained its love of efficiency, but balanced it with joy, creativity, and spontaneity. "We're seeing new art forms emerge," reported the Cultural Exchange Director. "Gray mathematical precision combined with human emotional expression has created entirely new forms of beauty." The lesson of the war had been learned. The council chambers displayed it in carved letters. Strength lies not in perfection, but in adaptation. Not in uniformity, but in diversity. "The children of all species now learn together," said the Education Minister. "They share their different ways of seeing the universe, making all of them richer for the exchange." The Gray Research Institutes, once dedicated to eliminating emotion, now studied how different species' emotional experiences could complement each other. Their findings helped build bridges between cultures that once seemed incompatible. "We've established the Galactic Peace Corps," Commander William announced. "Teams of humans, Greys, and other species working together to help developing worlds. We share our strengths and learn from each other's differences." As the council session ended, delegates mingled freely. Humans laughed with Greys, sharing jokes that would have been impossible to understand a year ago. Other species joined in, each adding their own perspective to the galaxy's growing emotional tapestry. "We feared change," Max reflected, standing with William at the hall's great window. Now we embrace it. Every day brings new feelings, new experiences, new ways of being alive. The stars shone down on a galaxy transformed. The great gray empire had fallen, but something far more precious had risen in its place. A civilization that celebrated both order and chaos, logic and emotion, unity and diversity. The consequences they faced weren't destruction, William mused, watching ships of all species moving through space. The consequence was growth. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemy. It's helping them become something better. The new order was not perfect, but it was alive, growing, and full of possibility. The galaxy had learned that true strength comes not from suppressing differences, but from embracing them.